Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Julia Leffler, and I am the executive director and co-founder of the MOG Project. And I want to welcome everybody to this really great event that we've put together with the help of UCB, who has graciously sponsored the event so that we can educate some of our people in the community on this clinical trial. The CosMOG clinical trial has been running for some time, and we felt like it was really necessary to bring together what we're calling a town hall. And those who are interested in the clinical trial should learn a lot today. It's a good opportunity for people to directly ask questions, so we kept it in a meeting format. And I want to say who we have here as part of our team to disseminate information. We have the legendary Dr. Michael Levy. He raised his eyebrows on that one. He obviously runs the Neuroimmunology Clinic at Massachusetts General Hospital. And we have the also legendary Becca Salky, who not only is the senior clinical a research coordinator. Is that right, Becca? Did I say that right? At Massachusetts General Hospital, but she has run a support group for the MOG Project. She's one of our members, MOG Squad members, we call them. And she also is a great volunteer for us. We have uh, Erin Brown, who is the lead clinical project manager at UCB. She's here as well to answer any questions. And in the second half of the meeting, we're going to have two patients who are in the open label joining us. Unfortunately, we can't have Erin on the call with them just because of UCB compliance and to ensure that the clinical trial is blinded. We don't let any of the clinical trial patients join with Erin. So Erin's going to be on with us for about a half an hour to answer questions concerning the trial from the UCB perspective. I'd like to go through a couple of house cleaning or housekeeping, I guess you call it, rules. Please, everyone, keep your audio off unless you're actually directly answering a question or asking a question. And I would also encourage everyone to raise your hand and we will try to get to each person individually. I will try to lower hands. We're all not confused. If you do ask a question, please try to help me out by lowering your hand. And if you're a little shy and you don't want to have your camera on, this meeting's being recorded. You can certainly turn it off or turn it on, and you can also obfuscate your name or remove your name through the Zoom app. But please feel free if you have a question to use the chat. That is not recorded, but the what we'll do is we'll pick the questions out, or I'll have some of the audience members pick them out. So I think we should go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to have Michael Levy, if he could, present on the clinical trial. We've got a short presentation that he's going to talk a little bit about. Go ahead, Michael. Welcome.
Thanks, Julie. How does that look?
That looks great. Thank you.
Okay, well, this is a clinical trial that has been going on for some time now, probably 2, 3 years already. And it is a phase 3 clinical trial, which means that if it proves successful, the company will submit the data to the FDA and then hopefully we'll get the drug approved for MOG. There aren't any drugs currently approved. There are lots that we use off-label, like IVIG, but this would be something that would actually be FDA approved with scientific backing. All right. So it is an interventional study, meaning obviously you take the medication and then we see if the number of relapses that you have are going to be reduced. We're hoping to not have any relapses with this drug, but really the primary outcome is going to be time to the first event compared to the placebo arm. And the way that this drug, the name of the drug is rozanolixizumab. It's this bolded name down here. Some people call it rozumab. And I think we have a slide on the way it works, but basically the idea behind it is that if IVIG works for you, this does a lot of the same things that IVIG does. and it just kind of takes the shortcut that IVIG, the mechanism that IVIG would normally have for your MOG. This would be essentially the same thing. Most of the diseases where IVIG has been helpful, like myasthenia gravis, CIDP, these drugs have been approved. So it's for them, for the company, this was kind of a no-brainer. They know IVIG works for MOG. We know this type of medication works for diseases where IVIG is helpful. So put two and two together and we launched the study. The design is double-blinded, placebo-controlled. And what that means is that when you enter the study, I have no idea which arm you're going to be randomized to. It could be the placebo arm. Placebo just means it's a sugar pill, or in this case, it's an infusion that's probably normal saline or water or something like that, otherwise harmless. But it does mean that you're not getting the drug. And I understand that that worries a lot of people because if you've had a MOG attack, recently and and you've had lost vision and even if you've recovered it, you don't really want to take a lot of chances with another attack. And so the idea behind this study is that if you do participate, you're only going to have one attack at most. So if you do end up in the placebo arm, for example, and you relapse, then if you do that, then you automatically end up in the open label phase after that, which means you automatically get drug. No more placebo risk. And if you end up in the treatment arm at first, then hopefully you don't relapse and you just stay in the treatment arm through that whole period of time. So that's the design of the study. Now, I don't know which arm you end up in. Erin doesn't know which arm you end up in. Julie, Becca, nobody knows which arm you end up in. If you do relapse, we still don't know which arm you end up in. It won't be revealed until the very end of the study, and that's the whole design of that is really the most robust, unbiased way that the FDA can use to determine if the drug actually works. And then if it does, then they'll hopefully approve it. So who can participate? They're looking for about 100 people total. I believe we've enrolled more than 80 already. So um, it's not too much longer until the study is completed. You do have to be between 18 and 89. When we first designed the study, we told them there were a lot of MOG people who were under 18, and we tried really hard to get kids enrolled, and the FDA just wouldn't have it. There was not enough safety data, and so unfortunately, you have to be an adult. And you have to have had at least one relapse in the last 12 months. The reason for that is we know with MOG, some people just get better by themselves, which is great for those people. But we don't want to include those people in this trial and then nobody relapses because then we don't learn anything. So you had to have at least optic neuritis, transverse myelitis, or some sort of brain attack like ADEM. And those are the very, very typical events with MOG. So it could be any of those attacks in the last 12 months. Here are all the study sites. Actually haven't seen this map before. This is kind of nice. You could see all the sites in the United States. We are the highest enrolling country, but there are also a lot of sites in Europe. We are enrolling in Mexico. Is that Argentina or Uruguay? That looks like sorry, Brazil. That's in Brazil. And then Japan and South Korea and Australia and Turkey. So lots of opportunities. I think 65 sites total, something like that. Here are the US sites. Now, if you're not in one of these cities, don't worry because UCB has up to now been very generous with travel budgets. So I've had a patient at Albany, which is like right around here, and he used to come into Boston every week. We have, you know, if it's reasonable, 3 hours, 5 hours, something like that, drive or whatever it takes. If it's a train ride, even flights, with the very first few patients didn't have a lot of options, and so we were one of the first sites to open, so they'd come from all over. I know there are patients in the Illinois area who travel to Chicago, or sorry, from Chicago who travel to this site in Illinois. So wherever you are, we'll find a place for you. Here's a QR code. They have their own website. They're also on clinicaltrials.gov. There's some information on Julie's site at the MOG project as well. And Julia, do we have time for questions now, or what's your agenda?
Yes, so I think we could launch right into questions. And just a reminder to everybody that Erin is only here for the first half hour. And if you have questions for the two patients, please save them till after she exits the meeting. And please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm monitoring it and I'm looking for hands up. And certainly, while we're waiting for people to put their hands up, I think that there's some things that we can talk about amongst ourselves while you guys think of questions. One of the things I do want to address is the fairness of the trial, and just a lot of people might think that they are selected because of maybe for various reasons. They think, oh, they've sized me up as this type of person. They're going to put me in the placebo. They're going to put me here or there. Erin, could you address that quickly?
Julia, it's a great point. I think there's um, maybe some let's just be honest, some general trust issues with the pharmaceutical industry. What we've seen, very much maybe from the pandemic and from other experiences people have had with, the pharma industry. I assure you, this is a very highly regulated industry. There are lots of reviews by the general health authorities, which for the US is the FDA. There's also institutional review boards, which every hospital clinic that we work with has an institutional review board. And their sole purpose is to protect the rights of study participants. So they make sure that everything stays above board, that there's good confidentiality with respect to how patients are selected and randomized to the two treatment arms in this study. There are very specific inclusion and exclusion criterion that we make sure that in our clinical trials we do our very best to compare apples to apples. So we need the most homogeneous population that we can get with very defined criterion. So your study physician will make sure that you meet all of the eligibility criteria in our study. That's to make sure that we're bringing in patients that don't have a lot of outside stuff going on that makes it possible for us to compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges in our clinical trials. The other piece is when you are deemed eligible to participate in the study, you meet all the criterion. The randomization is what we use to determine which treatment arm. That is completely done by a computer. It's like a flip of a coin. We have no say in which patient gets on which treatment. It is completely randomized. It is there's no set determination by each study physician, by UCB. We have a list of a what we call a randomization code. It kind of varies placebo versus Rosimab, and it's just by luck of the draw which one you are assigned to. We don't cherry pick. We don't manually assign a particular person to a particular treatment. It is all done completely unbiased and randomized by a computer. And like Dr. Levy said, it's there is some questions about the placebo treatment arm, but if we don't have something to compare the Rosimab to, we would never be able to determine if it's the effect of the study drug that is impacting your IgG levels, your relapses, or if it's something else. So we don't have a approved treatment to compare with. So right now, the only thing we can do is compare to placebo. But like he said, if you have a relapse during the study, which is kind of the intent of the study drug, is to increase the amount of time between relapses or decrease relapses altogether. We would hope that you don't have a relapse in the study, but if you do, you have the opportunity to then move into open label, which means all of the patients in open label are given the Rosimab. There is no placebo arm. So you have either good control in double blind or you get to move into open label. And we hope that Rosimab proves to have good control of relapse activity in your disease state. So it's really up to the computer to decide which treatment arm you're assigned to.
Thank you, Erin. That's such a good answer and really thorough. I appreciate that. I did see that Austin popped his hand up right away. So could you unmute and go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just make sure. So I had two questions. My first question is, um, so I go January 7th to USF, to do all of the MRIs and everything of that nature. If I get into the program or whatever, I know we don't know placebo or medication, but you said at the end we find out. So say I get in at the end, would I be notified of what I was taking? Like, do you find out eventually?
I can answer that unless you want to, Dr. Levy.
No,
You
go
have
ahead.
probably good experience. Yes, we do. We have to wait until the results of the study needs to finish across the globe. We need to close everything down, do the full analysis on the study data. And then when we are ready to release the results and the study report, we do share with each study physician which treatment arms their patients were assigned to. That is it's a very transparent process. We share it with the study physician, and then it's up to the study physician to share with their patients which treatment arm they are on. It's a long time to wait. I fully realize that, but yes, we do share the treatment assignments. Once the study has been finished, the data has been analyzed, and the results have been published, we share those treatment assignments with the study physicians to share with the patients.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I was curious about. Like if only you guys knew or if we would also find out was kind of what I was wondering there. So
Oh,
that
that's a completely fair question. I would want to know as well, right? You don't want to
right,
go through all that and wonder where you were in the trial. So
right.
yeah, completely fair question.
Okay. I had one more if I can. Is that okay?
Okay.
Please.
This may be for Dr. Levy. I'm not sure. So I was told, so I've come off all immunosuppressant medications. I was on Cellcept and Imuran, and I was told that from the time that I go and do the test, that they would put me on steroids leading up to potentially starting. Um, my question is, I don't tolerate steroids well. So for my onset and then my relapse, when I was given steroids, I got significantly worse. Had to move on to plasmapheresis. And outside of that, I have severe panic attacks and stuff with them. So I guess my question is, are the steroids mandatory? Or is it just a suggestion like, hey, here's a helping hand if you need it? Or
There's two parts to the steroid treatment. There's an initial little steroid dose at the beginning of the study
right,
to sort of bring you into the study and make sure you don't relapse right away. It's to cover people who are coming off of other treatments like you are. That one is required. I've had situations where people just don't tolerate them, in which case we can decide to just stop it, and because we don't want to harm you in the process.
right.
It is a requirement, but again, if you can't tolerate it, you can't tolerate it. And
Okay,
then the other part of your question was, can you use steroids? Can we use something else to treat you if you relapse? And that is an absolute yes. You don't have to use steroids. In fact, I hate steroids too. I try to find other treatment options.
right.
Um, I like IVIG. Plasma exchange also works well. It really just depends on, it's really whatever your doctor wants to do for you.
Okay. So if I relapse, would I come back to my neuro to address the relapse, or would I address it through?
Oh,
The
you have
doctor I'm
different
dealing with
neurologists?
USF.
Do you have a study site and a local neurologist?
I do. So I have a doctor that I see currently, and then would go down there. So I guess
Ideally, you'd go to the study site because they would have all the test kits, draw the bloods, send them
okay,
off, do all the MRIs, do the treatment, hopefully in conjunction with your local neurologist who may know you better.
okay,
They know work together and then put you back in your local neurologist's hands when they're done.
okay. All right. That's it for me, I think.
And
Thank you so much.
we
Thank you so
try
much.
to encourage physicians or the study physicians to see patients within 72 hours of the onset of any relapse symptoms. The visits in the study are every week. So you're getting an infusion every week. There's very little time in between those visits for anything to get missed or for things to kind of start. If you start seeing some side effects or some symptoms, we're going to catch it very early. And those weekly visits help us make sure that you don't get into a full relapse without some quick intervention. Um, we prefer that to be with a study physician, but for patients who are very far from their study physician, it can happen with your local neurologist, neuro-ophthalmologist. They can manage that relapse, but in conjunction with the study physician, so that we get the study information that we need as well, so that we don't. That's our some of our key information happening right there. So we would like for you to see the study physician, but
Okay,
they will work. The treatment for relapses is entirely up to your treating physician. It's not up to UCB. They will treat you with whatever is best for you to manage that relapse. And then we will work to get you into, if it is a confirmed relapse, we'll work to get you into the open label phase um, if you relapse during double blind.
okay. I mean, I'm 2 hours from my neurologist, and I'm like 3 hours from USF. So it's
Okay.
six in one hand, half a dozen in
Your
the other.
distance either way. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And one other thing I don't think we went into much detail about, but UCB does provide a what we call a patient concierge service. We have a company that works directly with all of our sites to set up any transportation, any overnight hotel accommodations, flights if you need them, all kinds of, parking and meals. We work with a company called JMAC that manages the arrangement of all of those services so that you don't have to do the legwork and pay for everything out of pocket first. They help take care of a lot of those costs for you, and that's completely covered by the study budget. It's not your treating physician. It doesn't have to come out of your pocket. We try to take on those all the logistics of getting you to the site to have your study visits every week. So just something to talk about with USF when you're there for screening is the process for making sure that anything like that gets covered for you so that you don't have to worry about parking and meals and I mean we've done all kinds of things, whatever we can do to help make it easier for you to get to the site each week. We're more than happy to work with you to try to make the burden as minimal as possible.
They've actually already reached out about it to me,
It's awesome. Good.
about setting up a hotel and everything,
Okay.
because I guess because it's a long day that day.
Yes, it can be. It can be. Some of the visits, not all of them, but some of the visits can be long. If you need overnight stay, we're happy to help organize that. The other point is some of our study physicians that we work with across the globe work with a home nursing vendor, and we contract home nurses to come to your home, your place of work. If you're on vacation, we'll send them there to give you your infusions every week. And then you only have to come back to the clinic I think it's every 12 weeks or so, to see your treating physician and, do all of your big assessments there. But the in between study visits every week can be done at home if your particular study physician works with our home nursing vendor. It's really nice. I know some of the other patients may talk about it later today. Um, they built longstanding relationships with them. They've just become, spend a lot of time together going through this process. So it's a really nice benefit that kind of reduces the burden again for patients having to come into the clinic each week, versus us sending a home nurse to you wherever you are. We do our very best to arrange that so that it's not so burdensome on the patients.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Can I
All
just
right.
add
Thank
one quick thing? The infusions are really fast. They're like less than 15 minutes, usually much less than that. And the study visits can take a long time because you check in, get your blood drawn, urine, do all the kinds of stuff like that. But when it's done at home and the home nurse comes in and out, it's usually pretty quick.
That's good to know. I really appreciate all of those answers. I do have a couple of really good questions in the chat. I'm going to read one from one of our community members. I'm wondering if you're in a country with less care and your original attack and first many years of disease were not properly documented. So, no spine MRI despite myelitis symptoms, for example. Would it be a lot harder to qualify for the trial if you're only recently got diagnosed with MOG?
I can take that. The answer is that it being able to diagnose previous relapses is not the standard for that is not as high as diagnosing a new relapse. So if you have a new relapse on the trial, you have to meet all these criteria. I have to examine you. You have to meet a certain level of disability. There has to be an MRI. There might have to be an MRI change. All these things have to happen for it to be a true relapse. But in the past, we can't rely on all those things because not everyone gets perfect MRIs, like you said, and so on. So to make a diagnosis of a previous relapse for entry into the trial, it's a little bit more nuanced. It could be like, well, that relapse, it seems like a pseudo relapse because it was the same symptoms as before and you were having a urinary tract infection. Or I might hear the story, I had a new vision problem and I've never had vision problems in that eye. And that's much more convincing for a true relapse. So that's where it takes a little bit of understanding about what MOG is to be able to make that distinction. But we don't have the same level of criteria for making diagnoses of old relapses as we will for making new relapse diagnoses.
Mhm. So I want to, this person has a follow-up and said also if you have more atypical presentation like crossover with neurosurgeons, does that make you less likely to qualify?
Neurosjogren's.
Oh,
Uh,
sorry.
it's an autoimmune condition. It has many manifestations similar to neuromyelitis optica and to MOG. And no, the fact that you have Neurosjogren's does not necessarily complicate the entry into this study.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's a great answer. So another question, how long after a relapse would a patient be eligible to enroll in the trial? And I'll let any of you take that, possibly Erin.
Yeah, we're looking for patients that have had a prior relapse within 12 months. And that's 12 months of being randomized into this clinical trial. So I would think based on the screening period is about a month, maybe a little bit longer than that for your study physician to review your medical records, do all of the initial baseline testing, make sure that we have all of the labs that we need, the MRI that we need, OCT, all of the baseline assessments. And that gives us a good starting point to then compare all of the future assessments that are done during the study. So we're looking for patients that have had a prior relapse within the 12 months before they get enrolled into the study. So, if you back it up a little bit, I would say if you've had a relapse in the last 10 months, there's still time to get through screening and get randomized into the trial if you're eligible and still meet that 12 month window. The reason we're looking for, I think Dr. Levy mentioned it, we're looking for patients that have had previous relapse because we need patients who have the potential to relapse again. We're not looking at monophasic patients that have only had one attack treated and are well controlled. We're looking for the patients that have the potential to relapse again, because again, we're looking for the time to potential relapse in the study. So if we put monophasic patients in the study, we would just be waiting forever for the next data point that we need to measure how long Rosibam may prolong that next relapse. So we need multiphasic, active, relapsing patients and not patients who are monophasic.
Thank you. That's a great answer. I do have a question sort of on the lines of being qualified. Somebody couldn't get into the meeting, so they texted me their question. This is for Michael Levy. If somebody tests negative at this time for the MOG antibody, but they had a history of many, many tests where they were clearly positive, and they've had a relapse actually within a year, would would they actually, they are on treatment plans, like say Hizentra, would they qualify if, or would they be, at least that, would that preclude them from qualifying?
I don't think it would preclude them. I think they just have to have a positive test within the past 6 months.
Okay,
There are some people who lose their MOG antibody, and that's maybe it's because of the medication, or maybe because it just goes away on its own. And we just want to, number one, confirm that MOG is the correct diagnosis, and number two, that it's still an active disease process.
I see. Thank you so much.
Just a quick thing to add to Erin's answer. I confirmed with Becca, if you have a relapse, you also need to wait a little period of time before you can participate in the trial. We don't want to take you literally out of your hospital bed and enroll you in the study. You have to recover a little bit. I think it's a period of about 3 months or so.
Yeah,
Or if you're
stable. Yeah, if you do have a prior relapse, we need stabilization before you can be then eligible to move into the double-blind phase of the study. So you're right, Dr. Levy. Um, yeah, we just need a window of time, and that's really up to the physician to decide when you've stabilized, and can, come off any of the other study treatments for that relapse, before you enroll in this study.
Okay. And one more question from the community, and this is relates to all this. This person says, can you explain what you meant by those patients that may never have a relapse? In my case, once I was on rituximab and now sub-Q Hizentra, I have not had an official relapse since July of 2023. I think this is very similar with me.
Yeah, if you're on treatment and it works for you and you haven't had a relapse in 2 and some years, that's great for you. It's really good. You are not eligible for the study because we don't know what your disease course would be like now. We don't know if you're still active. We just don't know. It's a little bit risky for the company to include people who haven't had a relapse in a long time. One thing about MOG is that if you treat it for long enough, sometimes it does just go away on its own. We don't want to include people who don't have any more active disease. So 2 years plus, that's great for you, but would not be eligible for the study.
Great, great. Thank you so much. So another person asks, is this medication an infusion? How long does it take? Is it a monthly infusion? I think you said weekly, but I'll let anybody answer.
Yeah, the infusions are weekly. It's a very small volume of solution that's infused. It's less than a teaspoon. And there's a small subcutaneous, which means it goes just under your skin. There's a small needle that's placed usually in your lower abdomen, and the study drug is infused over, takes 10 to 15 minutes. It's a real slow infusion. It puts that study drug or placebo under your skin where your body then absorbs it. And like I said, those infusions happen every week.
Okay, That's great. Now another person says people don't have to travel weekly once they switch to sub-Q though, right? Like if you maybe need a 3 hour flight to the flight, or something like that to get to the site. How does that work?
So we do have patients who are flying every week. And believe it or not, I will just sing the praises of one of our patients who has just been so diligent, and it's because she's very, very just consistent with her treatments, and she's very just invested in this study, and she does fly every single week. It's a short flight, but still nonetheless I think about her all the time, going through, parking, security, getting on the plane, getting off the plane, getting her luggage, getting to the hospital for her very short infusion. She has been doing this every week for 2.5 years, which just seems, it's not right for every patient. I assure you, not everyone is able to do this. She has just prioritized her care and prioritized um, her confidence in this study, and she's been doing it. Um, like I said, some of our sites do work with home nursing where they can send a nurse to your house, wherever you may be, to do your infusion. So it's less burdensome. But yes, there's patients that have been in this study going on 3 years, and still receiving weekly infusions. And this happens during double blind. It happens during open label. It's all the same, um, same amount of time, same route of infusion. This happens every week for these patients in this study.
So what you're saying is if you don't have a local neurologist that's even able to evaluate you for this and you have to go really far, that's still workable.
It's like I said, it's not right for every patient, but if you have the capability to get to a participating site, and again, like Dr. Levy showed on the map, you can see where those sites are. The in-between visits can be done by a home nurse. If that particular physician is working with our home nursing vendor, we can get home nurses to you wherever you are. We've had one patient who's being seen in Germany who went on vacation in Brazil, and we managed to get home nurses there in Brazil to give her infusions while she was traveling for a month. There's lots of creative things we can do to reduce the burden for you. We do everything we can to make it feasible. Um, if it can be done, I think we are happy to do everything we can to make it possible, for you to receive those treatments. And then you just have to go back to the primary site roughly every 3 months to, like I said, do all of the rest of the assessments, check in with them. Otherwise, we send the drug to your home and have a home nurse infuse it for you there.
So for that initial, and I'm gathering this from these questions, from that initial visit, let's say it takes a lot of time. Would they be able to stay in the area up to a month, try to get that done, especially if they were very disabled and going back and forth were difficult, and then possibly look for a home nurse to come to their house or home?
Yep. I can give you an example. We did have a patient that was flying from West Coast to East Coast. The first four study visits, when you're randomized into the study, you've qualified, you get randomized into the study. The first four infusions have to be done at the site, at the physician's site. That's to make sure if you have any type of reaction, infusion reaction, that you're there with them, and have good access to any type of, emergency care. After those first four infusions, you then can receive those infusions at home, just going back to the clinic every 3 months. What we did for the patient that was traveling from West Coast to East Coast is we did set up short-term housing for them near the site so that they could just come every week for their infusions instead of going back and forth. So we did, I can't remember the schedule that we did, but we did organize long-term housing for them to stay near the site to get through those first 4 weeks, and then we were able to kind of do the back and forth thing after that.
Okay.
They're
Um,
super flexible. We're happy to get creative. We're happy to, work with whatever works for the patient. We just need to know what those needs are so that we can help accommodate those.
Okay, we only have time for maybe one, maybe two more questions before we go on to the other portion where we really take a deep dive into Michael's and Becca's and the couple of patients' experience. Just one thing. Somebody was asking whether when this medicine would be available, if it was FDA approved, and all that. But that also goes into the second part is there any reason why we would think that the pharmaceutical company could manipulate the data or do anything that would make it seem so much better than it actually was in reality, just to dispel that kind of myth about it. It's a two-part
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, the manipulating the data, I fully understand that there's some, yeah, there's some hesitancy from the general population around how we may manage the data and whatnot. But I can tell you, we put all of this work and all of this effort into what we firmly believe is a great need in the rare disease community. And it would not do anyone any good to try to manipulate the data into something that we want it to be. We have teams that are what we call blinded. We have no access to the treatment assignments for each patient. We don't even see most of the data during the study. We have what we call independent data monitoring committees that get to see the data kind of behind the scenes. They're separate from UCB, they're separate from all of the vendors that we work with. They get to look at the data unblinded. They get to look at um, the data in a way that would tell us if there's anything that we should be concerned about, or they'll just tell us to keep going. Everything looks fine. Other than that, we don't get access to any of the data or results until the very, very end when the study is finished and, unblinded so that we can see which data goes with which patients that were on certain treatment arms. Um, it's I know there's concerns out there, but I can assure you that nobody wants that. Nobody, we would not work this hard and pour this much of our lives into something that we wanted to then sabotage in any way. And there are regulations in place that make sure that none of that happens. There's FDA inspections to make sure that everything is documented the way that it should be. I don't want to get too technical, but um, not to say it can't happen, but I can assure you, um, we would never want to jeopardize what we feel is a very good promise for patients to have a potential treatment in the future. And we do everything we can to make sure that that does not happen.
Thank you so much. And I guess in this, you see this on movies and TV, and I guess in this case, art does not imitate life, or life does not
Oh,
imitate art.
No,
So
yes.
thank you. I want to thank you so much, Erin, for being on. And I'd like to bring on the two patients. Erin, this has been wonderful. Thank you, and we'll see you another time.
Yes, I just want to say thank you everyone for joining. The CosMOG website, as Dr. Levy showed, is available. There's information out there, and if you need more information, there's a UCB Cares email address. Yeah, there's links there for where the sites are located. So feel free to check that out and let us know if you have any questions. So thanks, Dr. Levy, for sharing today, and good luck to everybody.
Yes, thank you, Erin, and
Thanks,
everybody.
Julia.
Thanks. Everybody stay on because we've got more coming. Um, I'm going to introduce, we were going to reveal where are our patients. Um, let's see, where are you? And there she is. And we've got another one. Hopefully he'll join in. I've got Danielle Silverman. She's one, I'm sorry, I can say your name at this point, I think. Danielle. She is here to talk about, and she's going to run the rest of the meeting and take your questions. But she's basically here to talk about her experience. And we've got Jim Broutman, the mayor of MOGAD. He's our chief media officer and happens to be in the open label with Danielle. So Danielle, I want you to take it away from here. And what I'm looking for is to kind of go around the room and kind of give everyone's experience with the trial. And this is Michael, Becca, Danielle, and Jim, just to start, to kind of give us an idea of what your experience with the trial is, and also what you do generally for patients in the trial, if you're Michael or Becca. So, Danielle, go ahead. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Julia. Yeah, so just briefly, I've been in the CosMOG trial for almost over 3 years now. I enrolled and started the screening in May of 2022. So for me, I've been actually, I think Erin brought up, but I'm the patient that travels from Chicago to Peoria every week. And I've been pretty much doing that since passing the screening and receiving the weekly treatment. I have been in the open label extension portion of the clinical trial. I, without going too much into detail, I did relapse initially, and then was moved on to I believe, the drug arm of the trial, though, as Michael has said, we never 100% know which portion of the trial we're on. But since being moved on to that portion of the trial, I have been relapse free and off of steroids since about August or September of 2022. So I'm in the open label extension now, and I go travel every week to receive my treatment. And that's a little bit about me. I'll let Jim share his experience with the trial. I think you're on mute, Jim.
Okay, sorry about that. I was actually the other patient that Erin spoke about, and I was steroid dependent for 18 months and in a very, very bad condition. And my doctor at Mayo Clinic, Dr. Chen, had absolutely insisted that I get into this trial. And I was in such bad condition. Dr. Levy actually was so kind to get me in there as quick as he could. I was a month behind Danielle. And I also relapsed at the very beginning. And I think it's very important for everyone to know, and Dr. Levy told me very quickly into this journey that my health is number one, and that they will always look after my health first over the trial. And I think that's very important for everyone to know. And so he took care of me very quickly, got me into open label. And like you, I've been not only relapse free for over 3 years now, but I've never felt better since my journey started. And I'm just very happy with the trial.
Great. And Rebecca, what has your experience been in the trial? I know that you have approached it more from the coordinator side, but what has your experience been in terms of dealing with the patients and running the more logistics side of things?
Thanks, Danielle. Yeah, so Jim was our first participant, and that was, we were arranging travel and all that, which there's a lot that happens on the back end in the coordinator world. So if you are in the trial, just being as in touch with the coordinator as possible, like Jim did, was great, and we were able to organize travel for him. But I've been working on this since we started it up, I think like mid 2021 was when we were starting to get things going on the back end. Like Erin said, there are a lot of things that happen with the IRB, with the data committee, things that we are just doing behind the scenes. So originally I was a hands-on coordinator, and now I help sort of help the coordinators run the trials that we do. And this is one of the trials that we run. So I just happen to know a lot about it. I'm happy to answer any questions on the side if anyone wants to message me, or I can also pass messages along to Dr. Levy very easily.
Thank you, Becca. And then I guess, Michael, if you'd like to share, your experience with the trial in a more hands-on way, or just kind of run through what, a day in the life of a patient who's, enrolling in the trial or participating in the trial might look like.
Yeah, I think at the onset there's a lot of nervousness about which arm you're going to be randomized to and how you're going to handle all the visits and things like that. So it is there's a lot of anxiety at the beginning, but then things just kind of iron out over time and it becomes a little bit more routine, especially with the home care option, and I just see once every 3 months. And then things just kind of go on autopilot for a long time and hopefully the trial is going to come to a close fairly soon. Um, I know exactly how many patients have enrolled, and I know that they're very, very close to finishing. So we're just waiting for that last batch of patients to come in, and then the study will close. And then, like I said, hopefully after the data is revealed, we'll have first, or maybe there's already a study that's already closed, the satralizumab trial. So we'll probably have, my guess, two drugs that are approved for MOG in 2027 because it takes that long. Even if we were to close everything today and do all the data analysis and FDA submission, it's still going to go all through 2026 in the FDA's hands, and then they might approve in 2027.
Thank you. So I guess a function of having some of the patients appear, and we will open up to questions, but I would like to kick it off by asking Jim, as being a participant in a clinical trial, there's a lot of anxieties and you weigh the pros and cons. And oftentimes, at the beginning, you feel, a little bit like a guinea pig, participating in research. So what were some of the ways in which you were able to dispel, those fears of participating in clinical research and what led you to enroll in the trial?
That's a really good question. I'm not probably the typical patient in the fact that, I really had to put everything, all my trust into my doctors. And I really, really trust Dr. Chen at Mayo Clinic. He was so insistent on this that I really didn't think twice. It's probably not the right thing. I did do some research on the drug, and I understood that it was already being used for myasthenia gravis. And so I was able to see what the side effects were, and they didn't seem that concerning to me. And we discussed that. And so that was kind of, I really wasn't, I always say I was kind of stupid in the sense that I wasn't fearful. I didn't think twice. So I lucked out.
Thank you. So just looking into the chat, it does seem that there's a question from Ariane, asking, is the Roseanne trial closing to new patients soon? Michael potentially could help to answer that one.
I think the study will close after they enroll 104 people, and I think they're well over 80, probably closer to 90. And this is worldwide. So as soon as they get their 104, then they will close, yes. And I saw some questions in the chat about Canada. And what really surprised me is that there are no Canadian sites, if I'm not mistaken, Jim, is that correct?
Yes, that's
I think
correct.
that was a business or regulatory decision. I don't know why, but it doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense to me why we wouldn't have any sites in Canada, but we don't. So if you are in Canada, you can come to the US. It could be a site here, but the home nursing option, I don't know if that's available in Canada.
Are there any barriers to someone coming from Canada to the United States, being it's another country, or in terms of their insurance, the way their healthcare works versus ours when you're doing a clinical trial, or that's not really an issue?
I don't know, honestly. I think
Right.
that there are financial considerations. If a patient relapses in Canada, can they get back to the US in time? I think there are
Right.
considerations there, but
Yeah.
Montreal, for example, which isn't too far from Boston, about a 5 hour drive, would be fairly easy, I think, to just come back down to Boston for site visits. But a place like Vancouver, Ariane, you mentioned you're in Vancouver. Seattle is not a site, so it would have to be San Francisco, maybe.
Yeah.
Quite a trip for you.
I would just like to add, I know that there's been a lot of discussion on travel, and Jim's done an extensive amount of travel at the start. Although I believe, Jim, you're now on home health nursing, so you do the visit every 3 months in person.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, having done, I fly every week, and that's, flight down to the trial site and flight back. And sometimes with, delays or whatever, it might even be driving, which they do compensate for mileage. Um, but in addition to that, they also do compensate for, accommodations, transportation to and from the airport, things like that, for meals that you, partake in during your visits, and through travel. So I would like to say that, they do try to make as many accommodations as possible for you to be able to reach the trial site on a weekly basis. And though for some individuals it might be a big time commitment, including the travel and transportation for what is effectively, a 15-minute infusion, they do try to make as many accommodations, and I found it to be pretty amenable. And I've been able to work full time while participating in the trial, with accommodations from my workplace, but still, they've been able to help me facilitate that. So I found that to
And
be.
they're very generous. They're so willing to help us. And I have to say also they had spoken about local doctors, your local neurologists, working with them during the trial. For my, I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but and I'm not sure if I should even be saying this, but I've not dealt with my local neurologist since I started the trial. I've been so blessed with these trial doctors and all the care that I've been given. I've had no, I never see my local neurologist anymore. I have no, my medical bills have gone down. I mean, it's really, there's a lot of perks to this trial. It's been great. And the trial doctors are all at the top of their game. And I mean, it's just been fantastic.
Thank you, Jim, for that. I have a question for Dr. Levy. This is Andrea Mitchell.
Hi, Ms. Mitchell.
Yes, I have a question regarding the trial. So I've had two negative MOGAD tests the last couple of months, and I'm going to do another test on Monday. And I believe they're negative because I'm on treatment. And we asked the coordinator, the doctor, regarding the trial in Stanford, and she told me to not get off my treatment. So what do we do if we don't test positive?
You have to test positive within the past 6 months. If you don't have a positive test in the last 6 months and the medication you're on is suppressing it, like IVIG maybe,
I have sub QIG.
yes, QIG, that might be contributing to the negative test. You won't be able to be on sub QIG through the study, so at some point you'll have to wean off to be in the trial. But I think you want to know that you're eligible for the trial before you start weaning off. What you're asking is a little bit of a delicate balance between really wanting
Mm-hmm.
to participate but also being safe on sub QIG. But the only way to know for sure if you still have MOG antibodies would be to come off of the sub QIG for I would guess probably at least 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
And then if your MOG test is still negative, maybe you're seronegative now, which would be a great thing.
That's true. Thank you, Dr. Levy. I will get off it for a couple weeks and get tested. Thank you.
Okay. If anyone has any additional questions, yeah, Austin, you have your hand raised.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. So obviously I know the benefits of getting on a clinical trial, right? But my question is, when it's all said and done, the clinical trial's over. Is there a benefit to the patients who have gone, say, the benefits of somebody who's gone through the clinical trial versus somebody who is, once the medication's FDA approved, if it gets there and the doctor's like, oh, we're going to put you on this. Do we have a benefit over that? Like, as far as, I don't know, like cost or anything like that, I guess is kind of what I'm wondering.
My understanding is you get free drug until the insurance company takes over. And
Okay.
if you're uninsured or underinsured, then I think the company still has an obligation. Becca, do you know?
I don't know the details of this or if they've been fully worked out for all patients, but we do know that yes, until it's insurance approved, they will provide the drug for patients. The company will directly.
Okay. All right.
I'll look into this though.
Thank you.
Becca, I guess I have a question for you that might be helpful for everyone. But as part of screening, as Jim and I have experienced, there is a pretty lengthy, set of documentation and consent forms that you have to complete. Could you explain a little bit more about what the, consent process looks like and what's included in that and how that can alleviate some of the fears for potential enrollees? I know there's a lot of documentation in there of
Yeah, there's a
so
long, long consent form, and you can talk to your doctor about it beforehand. You're not given any sort of like, you have 24 hours to sign this thing. It is very long. He can tell you about it. You can come back and re-sign it. But it is a very lengthy document where they walk through every potential benefit risk, all of the inclusion, exclusion criteria, as well as the expectations throughout the trial and the expectations at each visit. So like we've said, screening is very long. You come in and very first thing that's going to happen if you're ready to sign the consent form that day is you sign the consent. And then after that, there's blood draws, there's urine tests, there's MRIs, there's what else happens first screening. We're going to go through their medications, any sort of other conditions that you have, and just make sure there's no safety issues with getting
Eye
you on this
exam.
drug.
Sorry, eye
Um,
exams.
eye exams, yes, some specialized eye tests, and yes, that is the screening day. My dad was just standing there. Sorry, guys. So that is your the day of screening is very, very long. And if you decide you don't want to be in it, say you go through that and you're like, actually, nope, not for me. At any point, you can withdraw from the trial. There's no, we're not going to force you to stay in it. If the travel is too hard or something just isn't working for you, totally fine. And the doctor, you can still receive care from that doctor if that's your primary neurologist or if that's someone you want to see. So just want that to be clear that not forcing anyone into these. And we do go through a very lengthy consent form. Ask as many questions as you want. Please, Dr. Levy, piggyback on me if you have anything to add.
Yes, we do chain you to the bed, and you have no way to exit once you come in and participate in our, just as Becca said. And as Jim pointed out too, if anything goes wrong, it's always patient care first. The trial comes later. We always want to just fix the issue with the patient first.
And I have to say, traveling to Boston, Erin had said it was 4 weeks. It was actually 3 months. I had the best time. I mean, I felt like I was family with everyone there. The nurses were bringing me gifts, and I was bringing them gifts, and it was actually a great experience. I had been in such a bad place. It really was the beginning of my, rise to getting better. I had such a great experience that I hope everyone can, feel that. I don't know. It just felt like a family. You guys were so amazing. And same
Jim,
with my current location.
Jim, I'm so happy you're doing so well, and I would be happy to not have to see my neurologist again for a
I
while.
know. I agree. Thank you.
yeah, I would like to add to that, Jim. It's hard not to become very close to your clinical trial team when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
seeing them every week. So I have the same experience. I do feel like through participating in this, it is always kind of my best interests that they're looking out for. And if things pop up in labs, I mean, you don't always get lab test results as part of the trial. But if there is something that looks to be, like for example, infection or something, anything that comes up, you might have had a cold or something, they'll usually check in with you and make sure that everything's okay and that you can follow up with your GP or neurologist on the outside. So I
That's
do
another
find
good
that, yeah.
That's another good point.
Yeah.
I speak to my coordinator weekly before my infusion, and he always is checking in on all my, do I have a cold? Is anything, going on in the last week? They're very on top of our, other issues that are non-related as well. They keep very close reins on us, on our health as well. And I don't know, it's just been also my at-home nurse, which unfortunately you haven't had that experience, but she's like family now. It's been 2.5 years, and my God, she's so protective of me, and I am of her. And she's always telling me how proud she is of me now, because when she first started coming over, I was on the couch watching TV. I could not get off the couch for a year for coming off those steroids, and I just felt terrible. And now I'm running in the house like late. She's already there preparing everything, and there's no TV on. And she recognizes that. I didn't even recognize that. And it's just, what a great, I don't know. It's just been such a great experience.
We have a couple of questions from the chat. Mary asks, my last MOG titer was drawn in August 2025 and was still positive. I have begun CellCept. Can this medication cause a negative MOG titer? And I'm assuming that impact screening for the trial. And I guess, Michael, you could respond to this one.
Yes, CellCept is not exactly the strongest medicine. It doesn't directly lead to the MOG antibody levels changing. But it could over time, like let's say you've been on CellCept for years and years and have been in remission, it's not unusual that the MOG antibody may finally go away. But it's not like one of those things where you're on IVIG or Plex and suddenly the antibody is not detectable anymore. So if you've only been on CellCept for a short time, I would still expect it to be positive.
We have another question from Ariane. Um, could you come to a trial site for official diagnosing if you can't get it where you live? And I guess,
We'll do that.
Michael, you can answer that. Yeah.
Yeah, trial visits are all free. There's no charge to you. Some people do that. They come in maybe for MOG testing or for expert care or whatever. They'll consent and then maybe they'll screen fail or ultimately decline to participate. But yeah, some people do that.
I want to add to that because I know that one of our members has been told that she has to get a positive MOG test to go to get evaluated. Now, that might be part of the screening before bringing her there. Is that possible that they're just not even going to bother? And this is the trial, this is the site itself that's saying this, not UCB. Does that mean that they're maybe just immediately going to use that for elimination? So don't even bother coming if you don't have a positive MOG test within the past 6 months. Is that something that's correct?
I mean, every site's individualized. That if the physician feels like there's no chance that they could enroll that person and has no time to see them, then maybe they would just reject out of sight. If there's a chance, then maybe they would. It's really individualized. There's no rule around that.
Okay, so then maybe if a person gets rejected at one site, and I'm sort of see where I'm going here, that maybe they want to try at another site where they think they could get a true evaluation. Is that something
Yeah,
that would?
that's reasonable. If you do get a full evaluation and screen fail, you're allowed a second evaluation by blood test. And then after two, then we kind of say, okay, that's it.
Okay, that's good to know, actually. Very good information.
Um, Still welcoming questions in the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand. But I do have another question. Oh, Becca, I guess.
Yes,
How
thank
it
you. I was
works.
just going to answer the question I couldn't fully answer earlier, that UCB will provide the drug for free until it's approved and on the market. And then UCB will transition you to be covered by insurance. And a team at UCB will help with that whole process. And underinsured patients or patients with no insurance, UCB will connect you to services that can help cover the cost. That's
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. Yeah, that's definitely always on my mind as well, and I'm sure Jim as well, in terms of what the transition will look like when we hopefully get there. Um, but I'm very much of the approach I try to take things one day at a time. So, but thank you. I did want to ask, so part of what we mentioned in the slides earlier, was that the drug is anticipated to extend time between relapses. Um, and I was just wanted to ask, for clarification, what does a relapse look like while on the trial, and what are the outcomes if you do relapse after being screened and enrolled in the trial? Um, and I guess this will go to Michael or Becca if you'd like to respond.
I only caught part of that, Danielle. I'm sorry. That's why I was pointing at Becca. I was hoping she could answer. Or could you repeat it one more time?
Sure. So part of this trial may involve relapsing while being enrolled in the trial, after screening and being enrolled. So if you do relapse while on the trial, what happens after a relapse? What are the potential outcomes? How is that dealt with as being part of the trial and relapsing?
Yeah. The relapse is the most important part of the study. So if you do relapse, we do everything. We dig into where the relapse occurred, how inflamed it is. We MRI it. We take blood tests. We don't do spinal fluid unless you let us. We always want to, but it's invasive, and we understand if you don't want us to do it. But we're really trying to learn as much about MOG as we can. And then we treat it as well as we can. And that whole event is like a very precious time because we really want to make sure it's a true relapse. And like I said, we can't tell you if you're on the drug or not. We won't know that until the end of the study. But then at the end of the study, we look back, we calculate all the relapses that occurred on the drug arm and all the relapses that occurred in the placebo arm. And hopefully there's a big, big difference. But that relapse event is a very important time in the trial. Afterwards, then you get into the open label phase. Then it gets pretty boring because you know you're getting drug. You just come in every once a week or get the home infusion, and then you're just kind of on autopilot waiting for the trial to be done.
Jim, you have your hand up. I think you're on
Sorry,
mute.
I muted. I do have a question. I was wondering if Michael can explain the how certain drugs are suppressants and how this drug is not a suppressant. And I actually feel like it's an immune booster. I'm not sure about other people, but ever since I've been on this drug, I've very rarely been getting sick. And when I've had a cold, it's been very minor compared to previous colds my whole life. And I'm wondering, I'm not sure if that's because of this drug. And I feel like a lot of people are very concerned about, being on a suppressant. And maybe we can explain to others how this works so that they know it's not.
I think the term suppressant is relative. I'll tell you how the drug works. Basically, you have a bunch of antibodies circulating in your body, and they're protective. They're doing good things, fighting off infections. Some of them could be bad. And the way this drug works is it just speeds up how fast you recycle those antibodies. So when Jim gets an infusion, a whole bunch of antibodies get recycled and destroyed, and then because his immune system is intact, he just makes all those antibodies again. Hopefully, all the good ones and not as many of the bad ones. That's exactly how the drug is supposed to work. And IVIG does the same thing. You get a big bolus of antibodies, and then your body recycles a bunch of them, and all your bad ones get diluted out, and all your good ones hopefully are still there, and plus you get antibodies from the community. So Jim's right, it doesn't directly impact your immune cells or anything like that. Those are all functional, doing their thing. But some people will call it an immune suppressant because the number of antibodies does go down transiently before they bump right back up.
Is there a drug on the market? A lot of people get confused between drugs that prevent relapses and then drugs that help you in an acute attack, like prednisone. Um, can you talk about that at all? And I mean, this drug does not like it's only preventing us from relapsing, right? It's not.
Maybe. We're testing there's several of these drugs on the market. Rosanolixizumab is just one. There's another FcRn drug that has the exact same mechanism called efgartigimod. It's also approved for myasthenia, and we're testing that in acute optic
Oh, okay.
neuritis.
That'd be
So
amazing.
these drugs work very, very fast. There's no reason why it wouldn't work in the acute setting, but this trial is
Right.
only designed for preventive. The
Got it.
FDA distinguishes those two types of modalities. There's acute treatment and preventive treatment. They can't get approval for both. It has to be two separate trials. Um, we offered rosanolixizumab the acute treatment trial. They're stretched thin, so efgartigimod jumped in and said, yes, we'd like to do that.
Oh,
So
wow.
hopefully we'll find out for both. But it's
That
the
would be
same,
amazing.
they're essentially the same drug, but
So
slightly.
once it's approved, hopefully, it could be possibly used as an acute treatment.
Yeah, people will use it, but whether it'll be FDA approved for an
Right.
acute treatment, that's totally different.
Interesting. Thank you.
One thing I have a question. I know I couldn't find a way to raise my hand, I think because I'm the host. But and actually it relates to the questions in the chat where if you have these what you think are really over time small relapses, in other words, breakthroughs in your current preventative medication, but you can't really recognize that as an actual relapse. Or maybe there's nothing on MRI to confirm that relapse because I understood that there was through other sites that there was a requirement to have that showing on relapse on MRI. Is that something that would be a disqualifier in your mind, Michael? And
So MRI is not required to adjudicate a relapse. It has to meet certain criteria, but MRI is not required. It's certainly supportive. For example, if there's an event and and it's just so obvious to us that it's an optic neuritis, if you get an MRI and there's no lesion there, it might still be an optic neuritis. It might still count. It just depends on how severe it is and the circumstances. We know with MOG, if you get the MRI too soon or too late, sometimes the MRI changes are a little finicky. I've had one MOG patient who came in very quickly, got the MRI. We saw nothing there. We said, don't see anything. And then the very, very next day, got a repeat MRI. I'm sure the insurance loved that. And then it was blazing and it was very, very obvious she had an optic neuritis 1 day later. That's just MOG. MOG is finicky. We recognize that. And so for the clinical trial, it's not required, but it's certainly helpful.
So I guess going back to some of the patient perspectives, for Jim, um, I know, clinical trial is just a part of our everyday life and everything else we do. How do you balance all of your other commitments with participating in the trial? And for you are in home health nursing as well. So how does that differ for you, being able to have the home health nursing and being able to balance all other commitments? And have you had to make significant modifications to your everyday life, as being a participant in this trial?
Oh, unfortunately, after I had my transverse myelitis episode, I had to retire. So I actually have time on my hands. So it really hasn't impacted me. I'm probably not the best person to ask that. But they just are so helpful and willing to accommodate our schedules. And you can't be shy. If we have an issue, you just have to speak up and ask for the help from UCB. And, they're just are very willing to help us. So it really hasn't impacted me, even without being that busy. If I had to do what you're doing and travel every single week, I feel that would impact my life. So you might want to answer that question yourself. I mean, you're just amazing for doing this, and I'm so glad Erin pointed you out, because you're my hero, and you know that you're 1 month ahead of me in this thing, and I'm so impressed with what you've done. And it's just amazing. You're young and you have a whole life going on, and it's really amazing that you've done this. So maybe you can answer that question.
Sure. So I think it's taken a lot for me personally, it's taken a lot of legwork and kind of flexibility on lots of different fronts, both with like, personal commitments and work commitments and just medical commitments. Um, but I have found that I try not to let the participation kind of be limiting. And so I've still been able to travel internationally as much as I can. One nice thing about the treatments is that they are relatively flexible within reason. So even though it's within every week, I can choose between, a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday visit. So that sometimes can create a little bit of extension between visits if you need to be a little bit more flexible. But the other thing too is that JMAC, which was mentioned before, which is kind of the third party travel coordinator that helps with, the patient side of things with reimbursements and travel logistics. They're very flexible with being able to say, oh, if I need to travel from New York, because I'm visiting my family, they're happy to facilitate something like that, to coordinate flights to my trial site. So I think it's a lot of flexibility between the two. The other thing is, I think, as many people know, just with having MOG in general, I think being able to be open with your workplace and ask for accommodations. I've had the trial, my clinical trial providers be able to provide documentation that, I am a participant in a clinical trial. These are the commitments. These are some reasonable accommodations. And I'm able to work remotely from the hospital. Sometimes I'm working with, if I'm mid blood draw or something like that, or in the middle of my infusion, and I'll be on like the Zoom calls. So I try to be very flexible, and I think that helps. But for some people that don't have positions that could have a remote component, it might be a little bit more difficult to balance that with work. But I don't see why you can't get reasonable accommodations from your workplace for this, and I'm sure most trial sites would be happy to provide documentation. So, yeah.
And the other thing that we haven't really discussed is the side effects. And I mean, I have no side effects, and I think you're doing pretty good yourself. So that really helps as well with us to just go on with our life. And just, for me, it's a 1 hour visit weekly from my nurse. It's nothing out of my schedule. It's just been very, very easy for me. So it's just been great.
Yeah, I will say, I initially had some more, I guess, severe side effects at the start. I do
Right.
know that they lowered my dose based off my weight. I'm a little on the smaller and shorter side. So I think I am receiving a slightly lower dose, and that significantly helped. So for me, I think the side effects are somewhat similar to IVIG for a lot of people, where I just need to stay pretty hydrated. Minor headaches, things, fatigue, but very similar to a lot of other medications, I think, on the market. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. One of the things I guess I could ask Becca, so just wondering, based off of the data that you have on demographics, what are we seeing with the demographics for enrollees in this clinical trial? Um, Not, in terms of age, but also in terms of, what are you seeing in terms of profession? Does it tend to be more individuals who are retired or can have, remote work opportunities, or are you seeing kind of a varied mix?
We're seeing at our site, I can really only speak to our site, but we are seeing a pretty big mix. People are working, and I think most people have worked either part-time or full-time, but they do get days, they work from home. And so that is helpful. I don't know, Dr. Levy, if you know, do we have any full-time working in office patients? Don't believe so.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think so. So I think, yeah, the flexibility you mentioned is important, both on the site side and on the patient side. And the windows between where it doesn't have to be exactly 7 days apart. If you want to travel, if you want to do something, you just have to communicate with us and we can push a lot of visits, 2 or 3 days out. So could be on a Monday and the next week you get it on the Wednesday or Thursday. So if you wanted to travel within that time. But it's definitely, it is a clinical trial and there's time commitment. And yes, that's all I have.
Well, I wanted to just ask really quickly because I do know that a lot of HR departments will accept a note and they'll make these reasonable combinations, maybe to let you work 4 days a week, so you have a 3-day work week. Could you just briefly give a quick rundown of what exactly the commitment is, like the first month and after and whatever?
Yeah, so the first month is a lot. There's the screening visit, and then you'll come in for a baseline visit. And then after the baseline, that first week, you have to come in 3 times that week. So that's like the heaviest week you're going to have. And you're not going there for very long. It's visit one, phase B and C, visit one, phase B, visit one, phase C. And that's all within 1 week. So that first week might be a little bit heavier. And if someone needs to take time off work, that might be a good week to do that. And then for each future visit at the beginning, like we said, there's some hiccups at the beginning. And you have to sort out some issues. So visits might take longer, but once you get in the swing of things, visits can be pretty quick. And especially if you have home dosing, you're coming into the site every 3 months, and those visits might be 3 hours each. But you can expect, what to expect once you're 4 months into the trial and you've gone through some of these visits. But I would say at the beginning, you want to just know that things might be a little bit more hectic, and that doesn't mean that's how they're going to stay for the next 2 or 3 years that you're in the trial.
Well, and also as time goes on, the visits are shorter and shorter. They do less testing. It gets a little easier and easier.
Yeah.
And Jim, you're getting home visits, right?
Yeah.
And Danielle, you're hoping to go to something like that, right?
Yeah.
No.
Or no?
I
Well,
I so I'm hoping to actually transfer. Yeah, yeah. I'll be moving to Minnesota, so I'm hoping to transfer to Mayo so I could do home visits instead. Because though there are a lot of, it is helpful that they cover the transportation and, work is accommodating. Of course, flying twice a week is still a big commitment and has a lot of impacts to your life. So I'm trying to mitigate that hopefully by moving and transferring to a site that does facilitate home health nursing. And the reason I haven't been able to get home health nursing at my trial site is because it's a hospital policy. So each trial site has their own policies around being able to facilitate that, and the site that I'm at just doesn't allow for it. So we've tried to work out a bunch of different ways to be able to get treatment up in Chicago, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. So yeah.
That's great. We really just have it's sort of time for this to end, which is sad, I have to say. But we have one more question. Danielle, you want to cover that, and then we're going to I'll wrap it up with some good information, I hope.
Sure. Yeah. So this question is asking about aseptic meningitis. And I know that I mentioned that initially when I was first given the medication after my relapse on the trial, I did experience some severe headaches, which led to a ER admission and, sensitivity to light, vomiting, things like that. So those were some adverse effects. I don't think it was ever confirmed as aseptic meningitis because I didn't have a lumbar puncture at the time, but it's suspected. Um, and so the question basically asks if there's anything else that they did or did they give me any pre-medication. So, um, initially it was treating it as migraines and waiting until I could have the relapse, or sorry, this was after the relapse. So just treating it as migraines and basically giving some pre-meds. So I think I was given some Solumedrol before the treatment, and also some Benadryl and some other pain medication as well. But when they were able to lower the dose, that's when I was able to have slightly better side effects and none of the really severe headaches. So um, for me, that's kind of what they were able to do. I don't know if aseptic meningitis has been reported as an adverse effect for this medication. Okay, Michael is saying yes.
Yeah,
So yeah.
early in the study, and since then they've removed that highest dose, and since then there have been no aseptic meningitis cases.
Okay. Yeah, so I suppose it was listed in the adverse effects, headache was in that big consent form that Becca talked about. Headaches, severe headaches was one of the listed adverse effects that you could potentially have. So, you are, and I'm sure these consent forms update as we learn a little bit more about things on the trial. So, it was something that I anticipated going in. It wasn't unprecedented, and they were able to mitigate it. And I now don't really have any severe side effects from the treatment.
Thank you, Danielle. I tell you what, there were some really, really good questions, and the answers were all fabulous. But unfortunately, we run out of time. Now, there are going to be other opportunities in December and the early January and on to do these town halls again. So if you think of questions later, of course, you can always email them to us, info@mogproject.org. And I put some links in the chat, but our clinical trial page for the CosMOG study has that. We will be modifying that to add even more information. So I'd like everybody to continue to check. Um, I can't thank our guests enough. UCB certainly has been really a vital part of educating our patient population and helping us do that. And certainly about the trials. I don't know that everybody would be able to really consider that trial if it wasn't for their ability to disseminate this information the way they do and allow us to do that for them. Michael was spearheaded this whole thing. He's actually I don't know what to call you, but you're sort of the one who really recognized that this was a good option. And I can't thank you enough, Michael, for taking your Sunday to join us like this.
Don't have anything else to do.
Well, he always says yes, and so I am always so grateful for it. Certainly, Becca, you as well. She's turned her camera off, but she is obviously one of our best supporters. And then going into certainly Jim, Danielle, you guys were great in this, and I hope everybody gets their experience. Please feel free to, like I said, contact us if you want any more information, and look out for more of these town halls. Thank you, everyone.